I have a vision of life, and I try to find equivalents for it in the form of photographs.
All photographs are accurate. None of them is the truth. Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 176 for the end of January 2023. And we've 176. It's a lot of shows.
That's a lot of shows. I've been on a few of them, I think.
You've been on a few. Yeah, I was going back through the back catalog because our friend of the show from the Shutter Time podcast, Sid, she reached out to me and said, I'm trying to find your back catalog on iTunes, and it only goes back till, I can't remember. I was like, oh, really? And so it was only like 40 episodes or something like that. I was like, wait, we've done hundreds. And so I went and looked at the RSS feeds.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I had written down, instead of, having an RSS feed of, 200 or 300,
yeah,
I had a 40. And so
that's not enough.
It's not enough. And so I changed it, and all of a sudden iTunes, within a certain amount of time, kicked in. Our entire back catalog showed up. And suddenly we got a lot of people downloading.
Wow. It was showing me a graph. We got a little Devil's Tower, Wyoming thing.
We got a huge Devil Tower. It was incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know if it means that everybody who's been listening to the show is suddenly getting our entire back catalog. And I'm sorry about that. But you should only have new shows on your... Anyway, you should only have that set up. So anyway, if there's new people listening, welcome to the show. If it's all the people who've been listening to the show now have our entire back catalog, I'm sorry. But there's a lot of good stuff back there.
Yeah, I think it ages pretty well.
Yeah, and I was looking for I couldn't remember when you first started.
Mark and I were invited maybe for the book. Was that it?
No, maybe. I think it might have been before that. Before that, might have been.
Oh,
but anyway,
okay.
we've been talking for a while. So yeah. Anyway, that's nobody wants to hear that, right? No, I want to hear it. We all want to hear it.
It's your show. You can do what you want.
It's my show. Yeah, it's my show. Anyway, how are you?
I'm doing well. A little punch drunk from work this week, but here, just ready on Sunday night to just, knock this one out.
Knock this one. I'm thinking about when you can come and visit again, and we can have another photo walk, because I haven't had that energy.
Neither have I. I need to be in New York to have that energy.
Yeah, but even like that, it's just like, it was something. I usually don't photo walk with anybody, because I'm always doing my own thing. But the fact when you were in town, the whole purpose was to go and do photography. And so it was like a week of photography. And I really haven't given myself that opportunity to do that again, to have an entire week of photography. Because, practical stuff kicks in and all that stuff. But I could certainly do that. And I know, the weather actually here is sorry to say, but it's actually been not so bad. It's actually mild, gotten a little bit milder. And, it's just about hopping on the train and going into the city and being the hunter, and hunting pictures. So anyways, when you were here, I was like, oh, that's a really good, I didn't realize it was a good excuse to go out and hunt for photography. So anyway, it's though how to figure out to do that on our own. So I just wanted to rehash a little bit just for a second. It was great to have Sean Tucker on the show last episode. I was really, really honored to be talking to him. I actually finished his book. I didn't realize his book. His book has been out for a year. The Meaning in the Making. And I actually bought the book as a PDF, but then I also I started reading it. But then because I'm so used to hearing him, through his YouTube channel,
right,
I decided to buy his audio version too, so I could hear him, because he narrates the audio version, and I found it really effective and affecting and effective simultaneously. So I even reached out to him. I sent up an email to say how much that for me in this time period that how his book is really sort of I don't know, it's like sinking in. I want to read it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a shout out that I think that everybody should pick up his book if you're really looking to get inspired. And I'm going to say it's not only inspirational, but it really speaks to the creative process and especially coming from him because he's so open and vulnerable even on his YouTube channel, and he's the same in this book. Anyway, I wanted to recommend it, but it was great. It was great having him on last.
Yeah, it really was. I was pretty quiet during that because I was thinking, you guys are talking about all these huge philosophies of life, and I'm like, so I found it pretty chilly outside today. And, so I just asked my couple of questions, and it was pretty good.
You got a couple in there. It was good, but it was good. I like to have. It's funny because I'd like to have him and like a couple of other people like as a panel, but I wouldn't know what to talk about yet. So anyway, Rick, keep that in mind. It was great. It was great to have him on. What did I say? I think at some point I just sort of got a little starstruck.
Yeah. Well,
but he's humble and he's just a guy just like we are. And I thought that we could have that kind of conversation. We could reach out to him and talk to him. So anyway. But so going back through our back catalog of shows, I did notice that the couple shows that we did about why, right? We did one on why black and white and why color, and those got a lot of response to it. And we talk about this podcast that we're doing is not about the how to do things in photography, but the why.
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe we could continue that as a series, like the why of something.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. And I think didn't we do, we did one actually. We did one called The Wise Guys, right? Didn't we just do that?
That's right. We did
it
was supposed to be rapid fire, and we only ended up doing 2 or 3 for each other, and it was just every conversation was 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to call this one Wise Guy. Sorry, my titles on the shows, a little punny. But that's kind of fun. Anyway, but so to continue this, so I thought we would do another Why episode today, and what sort of inspired me. Couple things. One was this conversation that we had on our unusual collective Discord server with Dave Swiduk, our brother in light. Mm-hmm. And another was from a class that I had. I'm teaching street photography at Brick, and I have students coming in, and we, like in the street photography class, it's really about street photography, but people are talking about even actually I do street photography, and I do like an intro to digital photography class too. And because I've got such little time to do the classes, I leave things like processing to the end, because that could be a whole class unto itself. And in fact, it ought to be. And
there's so many different levels people are at when it comes to learning or understanding post-processing.
Right. And so what I wanted to do was maybe ask the question, why post-process our pictures? Why do we do that? Why should we do it? Why shouldn't we do it? I mean, why post-process?
Okay.
And, and again, I'm sort of hunting this question down myself a little bit too, because I've, over the years, have moved from doing a lot of post-processing to doing as little as possible.
Right.
But in a sense, that's not true, right? So when we were talking with Dave on our server, we were talking about film simulations. Now, so as a caveat to people, we're going to probably be talking a little bit about Fuji film cameras here. So no disrespect to other brands, but we're all most of us are Fuji owners in this in our unusual collective, and Fuji's film cameras have film simulations in them. So this is what sort of sparked the idea about post-processing, because film simulations are in a sense post processing your images on the camera, or maybe even pre processing. I don't know what you want to actually term them as. And I wanted to sort of play this out a little bit with you, because you and I sort of are taking a different approach
Yeah, we do.
our photography. And I think that comes from, frankly, I think it's coming from our backgrounds a lot.
Yeah, I think I would agree.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just thinking, and you had brought it up too, and I was thinking about it around the exact same time that you entered it in the chat, and that was that you did a lot of your work and all of your stock stuff and all of that on the slide film, and so
Right.
and you got to nail it at the moment because there's nothing you can do. It's cast in stone or emulsion, whatever you want to call it.
Celluloid.
Acetate.
Yeah.
Where I came from, the black and white darkroom, which was do the best you can at the moment, and then, do most of your magic in terms of image quality in the darkroom.
Right.
And I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly the case.
Well, I wonder if that's why one of the reasons why I fell in love with the Fuji system to begin with, and I think that just ties into, ties into where I am in my life now too, and the sort of the trajectory I've had. Like you said, I came from a commercial photography background, and I'm used to shooting color and being color slides and being finished with the picture once I shot it. And then, during the years, once, we started getting into digital and, Nikon Cool Scan, which I still have, by the way. Wait, actually, no, I got rid of it. I got rid of my Cool Scan. I had a Nikon Cool Scan 4000. And once I had that, then I started entering this age of, quote unquote, post-production. Rather than just leaving the slide as it was, I was using the slide as sort of the beginning of something, scanning it, and then doing some Photoshop stuff and doing a lot of work to it, and then outputting it. However, well, that was actually, I don't want to get into that story.
Yeah,
that was not easy to output, but and then waiting for digital and happy to get rid of film because film is a pain in the butt to scan and dust and crap and. Digital avoids all that stuff, and then coming back, and then these guys, Fuji decides to come out with cameras that are going to simulate their film stocks. And I was an avid user of, I used films based on the subject matter that I would be shooting.
Right.
So, if I was doing travel photography, when I would go away, I would often stock up on Velvia film. I think Velvia was great for travel stuff, especially because it really added this punchy color and stuff like that. But some other things I would shoot Kodachrome for, or tungsten Kodachrome. Actually, Kodachrome tungsten film was Kodachrome 60. Was it a 64 speed? Sorry, I'm getting. So this is the scroll moment.
Yeah.
Kodachrome tungsten, I think, was 64 or 80. It was one of the two.
Anyway, I
Anyway,
shot Ektachrome 160T was my tungsten film.
that was a tungsten film, yeah.
Yeah.
But you pick the films based on the subjects that you were going to shoot, or like how they would filter. The sunset would filter really nice with Kodachrome. If you put a magenta filter on it, it would be that was really kind of a cool thing. Anyway, Fuji comes along, they're doing this thing with their film stocks, and I'm like, I'm digging that. I'm already like, I love film stocks, and so maybe it wasn't so much the retro, although the retro looked, sort of the eye candy part of the cameras, but the internal workings. And then I realized, when we were talking to Dave, that that's sort of a pre-production kind of thing. It's like I'm going out, setting my camera up into a certain film simulation based on what I think I want to shoot in the world. Today is an overcast day, so I want, a film simulation that might warm things up. And then when I'm done, I've got a JPEG, spinning a JPEG out of the camera, and I might tweak it a little bit, in Lightroom, but nothing major. It's like not a lot of color variations, and I'm kind of done. Like I've gone from really digging and working in post production and Photoshop and stuff like that, to really just saying like, I'm done with that. You know, I'm kind of finished, and so I want to actually spit out an image that's finished and polished, and that's kind of like what slides were. You were kind of done. You, on the other hand,
and
this is funny because we're also talking about color and black and white here, right? Because you're doing mostly black and white in this department. So,
for me, it was you would, in your commercial work, there was a lot of setting up the subject, all of that. If you did some studio stuff, you did some still life, all of that stuff requires a lot of energy at the front end in order to get it to your slide, and then process the slide, and that's that. I was not like that. I would just go out and shoot or do a short term. I mean, I would do a wedding or whatever, and that was on color negative film. But I shot very few slides. But the workflow that I got into when I was shooting the black and white was, I'd have a hand meter. Sometimes I'd have a hand meter. Most often I would just shoot with the center weighted meter that we had in the cameras in those days, and do your best to meter and shoot. And if negatives maybe were a little bit thin or a little bit dense, you could compensate for that. When you were printing and changing the contrast in order to meet whatever your intention was. And I go back to my my metaphor about the image on the negative or in the raw file that shows up in Lightroom as being the clay, the raw clay that you're using to create the final image. So that's been my kind of philosophy. I'm sure if I had started or used more slide film when I was younger, I probably would have had more discipline on this, particularly on the exposure side, than I currently have.
You'd have to with slides. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was pretty good. I was pretty good. I mean, you were talking about, shooting different subjects. I mean, I shot Kodachrome 25 at the zoo, at the flower arrangements at the zoo, and my goodness, that is something else. Those slides are like stained glass. They are beautiful. So, I mean, I understand the appeal of it for sure, but being a kid and not being able to afford, slide film every weekend, it was just better to stay with the black and white and embrace that and the process around it. Also, too, I don't know if we want to get into this now, but what digital gets me that the darkroom doesn't, in terms of dynamic range and so on. Mm-hmm. And I can produce a product that was, practically not possible with film, I guess is the way I want to say it. In fact, on my tagline on my social media, I say I'm a digital photographer. So I don't need the final product to look like an analog image. And that's another, I think, and I was thinking about that this afternoon, about, there was I guess maybe a year or so ago, I found the recipe for Kodachrome for one of my cameras. And so I keyed it all in, created, saved the settings for it and shot around. It was interesting. The reds were kind of deep, that deep red, and the blues were kind of undersaturated and a little dark. And I was like, wow, this kind of feels like slide film. And I went around and I shot for a day, and it was cool. I posted this, and I think I got good reactions from you, and then I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this?
Really?
I didn't have a place to put it. I can use this to expand my experience of photography. It was like, I proved I could do it, but I don't need it right now. If I shoot something and it needs to be color, like we talk about that Manhattan picture of that young couple, there's that golden brown, image that I got that was just crying to be in color. So I created it, I did the post was all in color, but there was no tweaking. There was no color adjustments or anything, what I might do. Mm-hmm. It just happened to work. And in that way, it kind of fell into the slide film model, and then I got it. But that's not that's not typical. I just don't. I just want to get in there, have the raw file to deal with, and I would say 85, 90% of the time it's destined to be a black and white image.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just like to be able to play with the color channels and the exposure and the contrast to make it look like the image that I had, that was my intent when I was shooting. Although my intent would be seconds instead of minutes, like it might be for you setting something up, to shoot on slide film. And that just wouldn't have been. I mean, even if I think of my negative darkroom, there are things I can salvage. Not that I'm making myself out to be a really terrible photographer in terms of technical aspect, but it's not really true. But I think of it as, okay, I shot it in this circumstance. How hard is it going to be for me to get what my intention is based on those factors, lighting and so on, that I haven't given myself time, or that's on the street you don't have any control. You are getting yourself lined up in the right position, and really in street, for the most part, it's about subject. And so the light is going to be what it is. I'm not saying you can't, camp somewhere where the light is kind of perfect for you and to have people walking by, but that's kind of cliche. But I'm just to finish the thought, I want to create something that in Lightroom, in my post-processing in Lightroom, meets my intention. And that all the intentional part of it really happens in post. The shooting is the flash of inspiration. And then it's sort of like hope until I get to start the process. And then it's like execution at the end of it. So it's a completely different, and it's a digital process. And I love that. And the image doesn't have to look, like an analog image. It can be digital. It can have marks of a digital image.
What is that? What's a mark of a digital image?
That's a good question.
It's a good, yeah.
Well, no, I'm just thinking like grain. I'm okay with grain that looks
the lack
more
of
like
grain, or the.
Well, no, you can do that. That's one thing. That's another thing too. But I'm fine with the grain in an image looking like a TV that's tuned between channels, as opposed to a physical crystallized tri-X sparkly silver thing.
Okay. But that's only for you, right? I mean, in a sense.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're asking me, so I'm telling you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now that you're saying this, what I'm thinking about was when you were here. I mean, we took a lot of shots that were similar, but there was one that just sort of pops in my mind of these two women. One was photographing the other on Fifth Avenue with a cell phone.
Yeah.
And we both walked by. We both took the picture. In fact, I said to you, "Did you get that?" She said, "Yes." Yeah. And we presented the pictures from different angles. I also shot that in black and white. I remember having my camera set to black and white, and I also had I think I also had my wide lens on. It was the 16 millimeter, and I only mentioned that because my field of view is wider, I think, than yours in that shot. And because we were both walking in the same direction. These two women were standing on a corner. One was posing, and we'll put these pictures in the show notes so you can see the two differences. One was posing, and the other was photographing the posing woman with a cell phone, and she was sort of crouched down. And I presented the picture from the point of view of over the shoulder of the woman who's posing.
Right. And
you presented the picture of the scene from the woman who was taking the picture. So we sort of took it for opposite sides. Now, as far as processing goes, we both did black and white on that picture. I shot JPEGs, and so mine was already black and white. I might have enhanced the contrast a little bit, but I kind of left it pretty much as is, And I looked at yours, and I could tell that it was processed is not the right word. It looked, we pretty much have the same camera. Fuji cameras are, I would say there's a lot of similarities. We might have been running different film simulations or whatever, but and your picture, actually, I got to say, I have to say, I like your picture better than mine.
Okay, thank you.
And, well, because you did something in your digital darkroom to the image that is actually very, how do you say this? Well, I mean, it was very lovely. And I don't mean that because of the subject matter. Is there something that you did to the quality of the picture that enhanced or did something to the scene?
Yeah.
That I was like, damn, that's really nice.
Yeah.
And I, like I said, I'll put these pictures in the show notes so you can see the difference. And I want to say, I want to ask you what you did to it. I don't know if it's important.
I can't.
But you did something to it.
I can kind of tell the story of that if you want.
Okay, well, go ahead. Tell a little bit, because we're talking about post-processing. And I want to talk about, well, as long as you're telling the story about it, I want you to maybe spend less time about the technical stuff and go into the thought process about what you're thinking about when you're processing and why, because this is what this show is about. It's like the why. Why did you do this?
All right. So when we were shooting, I thought it was important to get the model, whatever, the woman who was posing, get her face, because she was facing the sun. So I was like, because we kept walking as we were going by them, right? So
right.
I caught, and I was in front of you probably too, right? So, or where was I? It doesn't matter.
I don't remember.
Anyway, so I was shooting, and I done got 5 or 6 frames right in the time that we walked past them. And so my initial concern interest was to make sure that the woman, I was waiting for her to put her head back enough, so that her face would be lit well enough, because that was the kind of overarching thing, and making sure that the woman who was crouched down to take the picture with her phone was in the frame. Those are the only things that really concerned me. Oh, and I guess the way she was posing, because she was dynamic. She was moving quite a bit. So maybe, waited a combination of waiting for her face to be lit well, and that she was posing well, and posing in a kind of an interesting configuration, and that the woman who was taking the picture was in the frame. So those were my initial concerns. So when I got him into processing, there are a couple of things I do. I take the highlights up a little bit. I take the shadows down a little bit. And then the secret sauce almost always, and it's been with these later versions of Lightroom, is dehaze. Mm-hmm. Move the dehaze a little bit, and it just if you take your shadows down and your highlights up a little bit to make it look like some of my images, I like to make the whites glowing in the images. They look like a little bit fluorescent. But there wasn't really anything in that subject that would really bring up whites, because there wasn't too much white in that image. So a combination of that and a little bit of sharpness, and that was it. That's all I did on the post side. I did a little bit of darkening because the sun was on the side of the building. It was shining on the building, and so I did a little bit of took the brush and darkened down a little bit of the building so that it was an even tone and wasn't taking your eye away from the subject, which was interesting.
Did you do anything to the woman's hair, the one who was taking a picture?
No,
really? Okay. No. Wow. I thought you did. I mean, there's some quality. There's some quality to her hair. There's like a highlight or something. There's some body or shape to her hair that I thought, oh, you just did a little magic to it. But that's what was in the shot, and that was within the shot. But there's just some, I don't know. There's some quality to it. But anyway, what? Give me the why now.
Okay, so the why on that particular image, or
why? I mean, you're so far you're all just talking technical. But what was the?
Well, the way I think of my workflow is, what's the biggest problem that I have to resolve with the issue, and then I'll use the controls to deal with that. Okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Okay, stop. Okay, we're done manipulating. We're good. We're gonna export this file. The why. There's that. I mean, that's just. I could just say that's just the way I work, but that answer is not going to solve you. I don't know why. I mean,
Okay,
just,
all right.
that's
Well, it's
just
fair if you don't know why.
that's
It's just
that.
it was an instinct for you to process the picture in that way.
Yeah. So and what's what's interesting to me now that I say that, there's the before and the after. What was I worried about when I was shooting, and what was I worried about when I was processing? Because
Right.
you really don't know what you have until you start looking at the raw file.
Yeah. Well, okay. Fair enough.
So that's it.
That's an interesting discussion about your picture. I was thinking you did a lot more work on it, but it wasn't like that. It was obvious. It was just some quality to it. But one of the things I wanted to get into about this why post processing, and now I want to jump to sort of this, when I'm teaching classes, is that a lot of the people who are coming into the photography classes, they're just learning for the first time, or they want to get better. They say, and they want to get better at the camera. They want to get better at taking pictures, but barely anybody is talking about like wanting to finish the pictures in a post-production thing. I mean, maybe it's not implied because the class is introduction to digital photography, but nobody asks. Actually, this is interesting. Nobody says, "Are we going to do Lightroom in this class?" Like, are we going to do any post-processing? It's like it's not in the vocabulary of a beginner to think about post-processing the picture. And I would answer them if they did ask. I said, no, we don't have enough time. I will talk about it a little bit, but
Right.
that's a class unto itself, and there's a whole concept. But I do end the class ish by saying to them, look, you can be very happy with the picture that comes out of the camera. That can be fine, and there's nothing wrong with it. I like you to think about the opportunity you might have in when you post process a picture to continue the sort of the continuation of your visual voice, whatever it is you're trying to say about the picture. You can continue that in a post-production environment. Now, I also say post-production is two things, right? One thing, it can be about solving problems, right? So you underexpose, overexpose, you get the wrong white balance, all the technical things you can kind of tweak and deal with. It's maybe not so in focus, or you got too much noise. We've got now tools to solve all these issues, the technical issues, although it's still, if anybody's listening to this, try to get the picture in the camera as best as possible.
Yeah.
Don't ever think about like, you see people in the t-shirts that say, oh, I'll fix it in post. And that's more of a film production kind of thing, or video production kind of thing. But
It's also a lazy thing to say too.
it's a lazy thing to say, right? Get your white balance good as much as you can right at the beginning. I always tell beginning photographers to shoot raw and JPEG, because then you got all that information.
Yeah.
Usually I say, if you shoot raw and JPEG, you might be playing with JPEGs now by, uploading them, but later when you've learned more about post-processing, you'll be happy to have had that raw file, because you'll be saying, oh yeah, now I can, look at it in a different way or something like that. But I do try to tell them, it's like, it's a continuation of the story you're trying to tell, and I think what's funny is that it's just not on people's radar, and I'm making an overgeneralization here, but my test pool is the students that come in, and like, I have a street photography class. I do a intro to digital photography class, and then I do, I got to change the name of this class, but it's a mobile smartphone photography class. And the digital photography class and the smartphone photography class are similar. They have a similar trajectory in it, like where I talk about the hardware, and then I talk about the wetware, like I say wetware, we talk about the cameras, and then how to, expose and all that kind of stuff. And then we talk about composition and like how to make better pictures. But in all those three classes, and my street photography class too, nobody talks about post-processing at all. Or very few people say, hey, we're going to do Lightroom, or what do you think about post-processing your pictures? It's just, so what do you think about that? Why do you think that's not on the radar of people who are just beginning to get involved in photography? Because, let me just keep going a little bit. Like, and of course, we came from the film days.
Yeah.
and the darkroom days. And so darkroom was built in. It's like you could not finish a picture until you actually did post processing. Now slides, color slides, no. Color negatives, maybe you're in between, right? Because color negatives could be both slides and black and white. You could be finished with the print, or you could go into a darkroom and do color processing. But so why do you think that is? Why do you think that there are these people who are starting out in photography, but right now they're just concerned with, like, they want to make a good picture, which they may not know what that means.
Yeah.
And they're like, how do I use my camera? But like we all, that's always a problem. Anyway, sorry, it's a long question.
It's okay. I think the big reason is they just don't know. Like they assume, I think we all did when we first got our phones. We were taking pictures and we're looking at the quality of them. We're going, okay, this one's good. This one's not so good. Oh, this one, something went wrong here. Something went wrong, and you just let it go. I think new people just don't know about the option of being able to do post processing. The big issue is, it's out of focus, or it's too light, or it's too dark, and and they move on. I think it's that simple. I really do.
Really? Okay. I thought there was some sort of conspiracy.
No, I don't think there's a conspiracy.
No.
Don't ascribe malice to something that could be, what's that expression? Whatever, about conspiracy theories.
But it just seems so odd. It just seems like an odd thing that there's so many people who are not thinking about it. It's not on their radar.
Well, it's the shallowness of a new pursuit, right? When you're not really thinking much of anything.
There's that, but I think here we go. I'm going to paint with a very broad brush here, but I'm suspecting that a lot of people's introduction to photography is social media, right? And so they're seeing, and I think that taints a lot of things. First of all, they're seeing, one-off pictures from everybody. Everything looks, spectacular for the most part because, and nobody's mentioning, on Instagram that they post-process the picture so it looks like this, or they did this, so that it looks like this. It's just the students of photography are looking at the world through a very filtered window. And there's no explanation. And so they go from, and again, this is a very broad brush, so excuse me for saying this, but they go from looking at, a picture of whatever, a New York skyline on Instagram and saying, I can do that. And they don't see any, I can buy that Canon camera and I can get that zoom lens and take a picture. And then guess what? It's out of focus. It's underexposed. The colors are dull, nothing like what they see on Instagram, because nobody's giving them that second half.
Right. And also the practical consideration too of, you have to be in New Jersey to take this picture.
That's right.
It's like no one, no one like this, like, I want to take this picture. Well, where was this picture taken? Oh, it was across the river.
Right.
Like,
right.
And
no disrespect to New Jersey, by the way.
No. I'm just saying you had to be somewhere else. You have to be
get there
across some body of water in order to take this picture, because there's water in the picture. Does that help?
Well, you were, and I was a black and white photographer too, and I liked, that's how I started, and I liked the darkroom. I never had a problem with it. I in fact, actually, I really liked the darkroom. I mean, I would spend long hours when I was first learning photography at my dad's friend's studio, and I would stay there longer. They would leave me the keys? No, they would just say they would. I didn't have to lock up. I just had to leave and close the door. But they would let me stay there for a very long period of time. And so, in a sense, I geeked out on it. Now, eventually, when I moved to shooting slides, there's no need to do darkroom work. It's pretty much done. And it was just the circumstance. It wasn't like, I'm going to shoot stock. I got to shoot slide film. But I still always liked the darkroom. In fact, I did build a darkroom in my apartment, which didn't work out so well because darkrooms and cats don't work.
No.
Not really. I tried to keep the cats out, but inevitably cat dust gets everywhere. But anyway, I did keep that up. And, and we have all these tools today. You've got computers, we've got Lightroom on your iPad and your iPhone and Snapseed, and there's all this crap available to us now for post-processing, maybe not as much as there are cameras and glitzy, shiny things for us to hold in our hands, but it's almost like it's the non-glorious part of it, like, and I've gotten to this point too, like I went to Fuji because, I've done my time in front of Photoshop and Lightroom. It doesn't mean I don't use I don't use Lightroom. And actually, if Adobe's listening, can you guys combine Lightrooms already, for Pete's sake? Why do we have two versions of Lightroom? It actually makes it really hard for me to describe to a student when I want them to use Lightroom which version they should use, and because I want them to use both versions. And it's anyway, sorry, but the one I use on my phone, which is the one that synchronizes to the iPad and then through Creative Cloud, is to me mainly for processing. But it's like I did my time sitting in front of a computer learning Photoshop and Lightroom, and like I'm not interested in doing that anymore. And that's why I like doing it on my phone, because it's more casual, and it doesn't mean that I wouldn't do the processing, and I have nothing against anybody who wants to sit in front of the computer and process. Like the way you describe stuff, it makes me actually want to go back and do some stuff with my pictures just to explore that again and see what it's like. But you know what I mean? But it's like that back end of stuff. It's like the stuff behind the curtain that nobody wants to look at. I don't know if that's the case or if it's a combination of both, but I don't get the enthusiasm from students when I say, hey, you can post-process and you can make your pictures look like the way you want them to. And
yeah, but I mean, you look at these later iPhones or smartphones that have night vision, and they have a portrait mode, and they do a lot of all of that AI stuff to make it look like a professional image.
They're doing all the processing for you.
They're doing all the processing for you, and computational depth of field and all of that, which is, I think, is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at actually in my mobile photography class, I showed one of the slides that Apple used for their quote unquote photonic engine, whatever the hell that means. Some sort of phrase, but it shows all the different steps and frames that the picture goes through before you take the picture, and then it comes on the screen, and it happens very fast. And I realized all those steps are according to some engineers deciding how they want the picture to look. And most people sort of agree with that, right? Because that's why they'll buy an iPhone, or they'll look at the picture and say, hey, it looks great, So yeah, on a phone, and even, well, I guess we could argue even with film simulations on any camera, but on Fuji camera, it's like, they want to sort of, Fuji makes a film simulation on their camera that's Velvia. It's an engineer's version of what they think Velvia looks like. Right. It may not be the Velvia that I remember in terms of film, but and then they're saying, okay, well, now you don't have to post-process. You've got your film colors the way you want it, and then you're done. And so why should we post-process?
Well, it's just it's an education thing.
Yeah.
Maybe we gotta, beat the doors down and say, look, let me show you Snapseed. I'll take this lame picture of this telephone pole that you took in the park, and we'll jack it up and we'll make it amazing, and you go from there and show them how to do it. Like, it's education, and combination of ignorance and education, I guess. I can't, that seems to be, from where I sit anyway, that seems to be the issue. People, they just don't know. They aren't educated in it at all.
Do we want to advocate post-processing? I mean, am I barking up the wrong tree when I'm telling a student they can continue their voice? Because I think,
yeah, well, in creative, if the point of you to shoot is as a creative pursuit, it's not, I'm going to my pottery example again. You don't just throw the pot on it and make it sort of look like a jug and then stop it. You got to put the glaze on and put it in the kiln, and then you'll have a finished product. You won't have the finished product until you do these not extra steps, these steps that are actually, I think, essential to creating an image that meets your intention. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
I show them pictures, examples from other photographers, and maybe some street photographers who will do those images of the shafts of light in an urban environment. I try to show a lot of urban pictures so that people can go out and get inspired by what they see immediately, because we live in New York and Brooklyn and whatever. And I'll show those underexposed or heavily blocked up shadow images with a shaft of light. And, I don't explain to them how that image is made. I'm just showing them a photographer's work, whether it's black and white or color, because you see that kind of work in black and white or color as well. And it just never occurs to me to wonder if they're thinking, how do you do that? Like that picture. Okay, so a street scene, shaft of light, dark shadows with a digital camera, that is automatically, for the most part, most likely post-processed in some way.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, to get that kind of picture, you got to darken the shadows somewhere along the line. You can do it in camera, but if you're underexposed in the camera, then your shaft of light also might end up being underexposed. But it's just the natural way of a sensor, you're going to get some detail in those shadows, because these sensors now have gotten so much better at recording those details in the shadows. So, if you're like, if you want that black stuff to show up in your picture, you got to bring it into a program. You got to darken the shadows and lighten the highlights simultaneously. You have to do something to it. I just wonder if they don't know what that is. Like, they see these pictures.
I'm sure they don't.
Yeah. And again, that is like, I just wish that they would come in. I wish there was some way that they already had that curiosity, or more people had that curiosity about the whole process. And maybe that's fine. Maybe they don't need to have that. And again, if you're shooting with an iPhone, well, actually iPhones, this is probably the difference between iPhones but iPhones, you can't get that kind of shot. You've got to post-process it, because the bloody iPhone is doing its smart HDR or whatever the hell it's doing, and it's going to give you detail in the shadows.
Give you a full-toned image, yeah.
And it's like, gee, would you just let me do what I want to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess what's part of this is bothering me, and here's a soapboxy part of it, is like the students, the people who are getting involved in this, they just don't know, right? And it's sad that they don't know. There's like no way that they're going to know, and they're missing out. Like, what a great opportunity for people to go out and learn about, oh, right, I can do film simulations or Lightroom presets or whatever, and finalize like that. Oh, sorry, that, and so this is off subject a little bit, but like, they buy a camera with a kit lens, right? And that's it. And I have to battle that argument a little bit about, like, yes, you can be a good photographer with one camera and one lens, and yes, it could be a kit lens, but you're missing out. Like, you're missing out so much if you don't investigate this world of lenses. And so I think that you're missing out this world if you don't sometimes think about post-processing your picture, or pictures. It's an opportunity to continue your voice, whatever it may be. It may be able to find something that resonates with you. You don't know that until you actually investigate it. And why don't people, why don't they?
You know what? You just reminded me of a blog article I put in, I don't know, 8 years ago. I think it's in my rosin.ca site. I combined, it's funny you're bringing these two subjects up. He was asking about my photography, this coworker of mine, and I told him I took this picture and I did this and this and this. And he says, no, he was disappointed. Like, you mean this was not a straight picture? Like the best pictures for him, the best picture was the one that you snapped and it was perfect and you didn't have to do anything. A complete misunderstanding what the creative aspects of photography of. And I mean, I think he felt I lost respect from him because of it. And I don't really care. But, there was a feeling like, wow, this guy doesn't have really too much of a clue about what it is. And then I use that in my little article or my little blog post. I said about, kind of jumping off that and using that as a determination as what gear you need next. The necessity drives really what it is that you should buy next. But I was just like, he was resistant. Like, well, then that's manipulation. That's not true, right? And that goes to the age-old argument about the truth of photography, which is a whole philosophical landmine or minefield.
That's for
landmine. It's not just one landmine; it's a whole minefield.
There's our panel show, actually. For that. I've run across that exact same thing, especially, and we've said this a zillion times, but when I photograph sunrises, I like to punch up the color. Or actually, there was just an interview that Barry NX did with this photographer who knows Brian Minier. Well, I can't remember the guy's name. Gosh darn it! Let me see if I can find it.
He cited Brian as
he cited Brian, but
inspiration.
What he said that was very interesting was that he shared this common thing with Brian about not liking greens in the picture. And I remember Brian saying that he does not like green in his pictures. When you start looking at the work that he makes and he processes his picture, you see that, oh right, there's no green in the picture. I'm going to find the episode. It's with a guy named Mike. I'm gonna butcher his last name. Pogli, Poggioli.
Okay, I'll let you have that one.
I know I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I don't want to butcher his name. I'd rather just spell it. Sorry. But he also mentions that he doesn't like green in the pictures, and he does these landscape pictures. And landscapes, landscapes are green. Like when you look at the world, it's bloody green. But you look at his pictures, and like I actually, with Brian's work, I was not aware until he mentioned that greens did not play a role in his pictures so much. And then I was like, oh, going back, looking at that, and I really dig his work. Like I love some of his landscapes, and I was like, there's something about it that I can't quite get. And until someone told me, or he told us, I didn't know that green was something that he tried to avoid in his pictures. And this photographer also said that. And, that's obviously a processing thing. It's not, you really can't turn your camera off to green. You just have to do some processing on the end with it. And I forgot where I was going with this. But in the sense that I've also come across people who've looked at like, whatever pictures I've taken, whether it's a sunrise or the headscarf of a woman in the neighborhood, and where I punched up the blue or something like that, and for some reason the person is bent on saying, well, that's not reality. I'm like, well, I know it's not reality. It's my reality, or it's how I like to see reality, or it's how I, part of photography is like seeing how the world, Winogrand said, is how do we see the world photographed, right?
Yeah.
I want to see the world in the way my Fuji camera sees, or in the way my iPhone sees it. It's interesting. If we were to see photography without post-processing, without any kind of interpretation, I can imagine everything would look like a raw file and completely flat. And that's not even reality, because reality is not flat,
Yeah.
And so, when you hear like what your person said to you, it's like, well, what the heck do you mean by real? What do you want to look at? A flat picture? Fine, go ahead. But that's not the way the rest of the world wants to.
Well, I think he meant that you have to wait for those pristine moments where there's nothing else to do.
He's gonna be sorely disappointed
shot.
because
And exactly once like in a lifetime.
Yeah,
and I referenced
if it ever happens.
And in that blog post, I also mentioned that back in the old days when I used to get Modern Photography and Popular Photography magazine, Popular Photography magazine, I think it was Popular, they had a straight shot, believe it or not. They had a 2-page spread of a picture that was a straight shot, like a slide film picture of some situation that was a straight shot. And there was 2 pages in the whole magazine dedicated to a one-off.
But even that, sorry, yes, and even that is BS, because what did the photographers shoot with? Did they shoot with Ektachrome, Kodachrome, Fuji, Agfa?
Yeah.
How is the magazine printed? Right? What's the bias of the printer?
Well,
the whole thing is just totally off the charts.
But the point is that there was no quote unquote manipulation, and that got the picture and you look at the slide and oh my God, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, that might have happened.
That was basically it.
Yeah. I mean, a 4x5 slide or a transparency film or 8x10 transparency film. Sure. Perhaps. But anyway, it's one of those things that's a little dumbfounding to me, and I don't know where people get those ideas from in general. Like when you see someone says that, and manipulation. Also, with one of my students in the class, I had to actually talk to them about the differences between manipulation and post-production. Like, manipulation to me is like, doing photo composites, taking things out of the picture.
Yeah.
Whatever, post-processing in terms of changing color is not in, they're subsets of each other in some way, but it's not necessarily the same thing. I don't, whatever, but you can make an argument that one's just more extreme version of
you're getting into a conceptualism, right? Which is and conceptualism has its own, well, not rules, but I guess you could say guidelines that you'd say, okay, we're departing away from what you and I might call straight photography, which is not, that's as BS a subject as the straight shot, but something that looks like, something you would normally see versus something that has, composite images of the woman who has 9 of the kids that they're all identical,
Right.
It's a statement. It becomes a statement, a more like an installation or a work of art that's incites in a different way.
Yeah. Anyway, this
sort of I do. Yeah.
Well, this also then we can start referring back to the why color and why black and white. Even those at that point when you're choosing how are you going to present your image, black and white or color is going to be a manipulation in some way of the subject that you're shooting. And black and white is maybe the more obvious thing because the world isn't black and white. But even doing color, why color, you're going to end up with some kind of effect. Whatever camera you choose, whatever computer screen you're looking at the picture when you're working on it, it's like all that stuff is going to affect the image. And anyway, I think we're gonna need to wrap up, but I want to sort of say if there are people who are listening to the show who are in that department of like not wanting to post process, I think it's a missed opportunity. It's something that you should consider doing, and whether it's sitting in front of Photoshop if you don't like that, or loading up Snapseed, which everybody should download. By the way, it's one of the best programs on a mobile device. I hope they never get rid of that thing. I was wondering, like, what will I do with my black and white tree photography if they get rid of that thing? But Lightroom, I think is great. I'm not going to go through all the apps that you can do that with, but sitting down with your picture, not adding. I'm not talking about filters, with rainbows and tin type effects and stuff like that. I really mean like sitting down with your picture and saying, what does the color or the black and white say to you? And, what do you want to say with it? I think if you know people who are into photography for the first time, like let them know that this is a continuation of the whole artistic process of photography. And we have this now more easily than we did when you and me, Ward, were in darkrooms. It's much easier much more accessible, I should say.
Yeah.
Less dangerous in chemicals in general. Anyway, do you want to end with anything?
No, just about following through with your give yourself as a photographer, give yourself an overarching philosophy of beginning, middle, and end. Get inspired, shoot your image, do the best you can when you're shooting, bring it into whatever your editing tool is, have an intention and work towards that intention, and trying to get the images to look like what you intended when you shot it will drive whatever tool or whatever mechanism you're using to create your finished product. And I think you go from there, and we could name names as to what apps we use, and we have already. But I think it's important, and like you said, a lost opportunity if you don't. And if you have that iPhone and you're interested, Snapseed is there. I agree with Antonio 100%. It's one of the best photo editing bits of software we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also because you do so much by touching. There's all these little touch points that you do. So it really feels like you're actually doing something with your hands, which I like. So anyway, great. Okay, fantastic. We answered the question. No, maybe.
Okay, good. Why?
Yes,
why?
And we'll do more
intention.
of these.
We'll attach with the intention. I'm really big on that.
Yeah, I like doing these. Anyway, that's it. Let's wrap up. Where can people find you in the world?
You can find me on Twitter and Vero as Ward Rosin Photo. W Rosin Photo, I think.
W Rosin.
It's been a long week. W Rosin Photo. You can find me on Facebook at Ward Rosin Photography, and I'm also on Instagram as Ward Rosin Fine Art.
Wonderful.
And also, we have my little company, which is called Ornis Photo, where I sell lens adapters and 7 Artisans lenses, and having a little fun with that. Just making me a little money. So, and it
Ornis
is our
Photo,
unofficial
sponsor. Yeah.
Unofficial sponsor, and that's at Ornis .photo.
Thank you for that.
How
And
about you, Antonio?
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
On Vero and Flickr and Twitter at AM Rosario. So any place on AM Rosario. My website is amrosario.com. What is it? Facebook is Rosario Photography. And I think that's it. And no more Instagram. You can see me on Instagram, but don't follow me. It's still hacked. That Instagram's gone for me, so I'm not going to worry
It's
about it.
dead to me.
It's dead.
You got to do the accent. You're dead.
You're dead to me. All right, that's great. Well, thanks for joining me tonight, and thanks for everybody listening to this. Yeah, thanks. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks, I hope.
Couple of weeks, absolutely. If I don't see you first in the funny papers or
in the funny
chat
papers,
room. In the funny papers,
in the funny papers. All right, Ward. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
Ciao, everybody.
Bye-bye.
This is the stuff I'm going to put on the show because we're doing.
We could do outtakes. We'll be like Smokey and the Band. The best part of that movie.
Oh, yeah. Who's going to be Dom DeLuise?
I'm going to be Dom DeLuise. Captain America. I should have a cape.
with the mask on. Oh, I love Dom DeLuise. My God, I miss him. He was so funny. Yeah. Those outtakes were those are the best.
Oh, it's Cannonball Run, not
even still. It doesn't matter. Those were huge. I remember those outtakes. Those were funny because he couldn't keep a straight face, and I think Burt Reynolds started slapping him in the face.
Yeah.
Or something.
And it just made it worse, right? Because he's like, don't. He's like, stop it.
Oh, my God. That's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the outtakes. These are going in the show. Sorry.
All right.